Humanity's Final Defiance. Part 1. The Gathering Storm. The vast, unforgiving expanse of space stretched out before Commander Emily Vance, her piercing gaze fixed on the distant horizon. Seated at the helm of the Terran Alliance flagship, the Andromeda, her steely eyes betrayed a deep concern that belied her otherwise calm demeanor. For years, Vance had dedicated her life to safeguarding humanity's place in the cosmos, her unwavering determination and tactical brilliance earning her the respect of both her peers and the citizens she had sworn to protect. Now, as she stared out into the inky blackness, she couldn't help but feel a growing sense of unease. The reports had been trickling in for months, each one more disturbing than the last. An alien armada, its numbers swelling with each passing day, was steadily making its way towards Earth, its sights set firmly on the blue and green jewel that humanity called home. The sheer scale of the invading force was unlike anything the Terran Alliance had ever faced, and Vance knew that conventional warfare would not be enough to turn the tide. Captain's Log, Stardate 2487.4, Vance began, her voice calm and measured as she recorded her thoughts. The enemy fleet continues to advance, and our intelligence suggests that their numbers now exceed 200 capital ships, with countless smaller support vessels. We are outmatched and outgunned, but I refuse to accept defeat. Earth is our home, and we will defend it to the last. Vance paused, her gaze drifting to the holographic display that dominated the bridge of the Andromeda. The intricate network of sensors and communications relays painted a grim picture as the alien armada's position crept ever closer to the Terran home system. "I've called a meeting of my senior officers," she continued, her fingers tapping a sequence of commands into the ship's console. "We need to devise a plan that can turn the tide of this battle, something that will give us a fighting chance against these invaders. Time is of the essence, and the fate of our species hangs in the balance." As the bridge crew scrambled to carry out Vance's orders, the commander leaned back in her chair, her mind racing with 1,000 different scenarios and contingencies. She knew that the coming battle would be the defining moment of her career, and quite possibly the last stand for humanity as a whole. The sound of the turbolift doors hissing open drew Vance's attention, and she turned to see her trusted officers filing onto the bridge, their expressions a mixture of determination and trepidation. "Thank you all for coming," Vance began, her gaze sweeping across the assembled faces. "I know you're all aware of the threat that we're facing, and I won't sugarcoat the situation. It's dire. The alien armada is closing in, and our current defenses are simply not enough to stop them." A murmur of unease rippled through the group, and Vance raised her hand to silence them. "But I didn't call you here to deliver bad news," she continued, her eyes narrowing with resolve. "I called you here because I believe that we have a chance to turn the tide of this battle, to give humanity a fighting chance against these invaders." Vance paused, her fingers dancing across the console as she pulled up a series of holographic displays. The images depicted the alien fleet's formation, their weapon systems, and the overall structure of their command hierarchy. "Our intelligence has uncovered a potential weakness in the enemy's defenses," Vance explained, her gaze fixed on the tactical readouts. "If we can infiltrate the heart of their armada and disrupt their command and control, it may be enough to give our forces an edge in the battle to come." The officers exchanged a series of cautious glances, the gravity of Vance's words weighing heavily on them. "I know this is a high-risk, high-reward strategy," Vance acknowledged, her voice unwavering. "But I believe it's our best chance at survival. We're outmatched, outgunned, and running out of time. This may be our last, best hope." Vance paused, her eyes scanning the faces of her officers, gauging their reactions. "I won't force any of you to take part in this mission," she continued, her tone softening slightly. "I know the risks involved, and I understand if some of you wish to sit this one out. But I'm asking you, as your commander and as a fellow human, to stand with me, to fight for our home, our families, and our very way of life." The silence that followed Vance's words was palpable, as each officer wrestled with the weight of the decision before them. Finally, a grizzled veteran named Sergeant Major Harding stepped forward, his weathered face set in a determined expression. "You can count me in, ma'am," Harding declared, his voice carrying a hint of gravel. "I've been fighting for this planet my whole damn life, and I ain't about to let a bunch of alien bastards take it from us now. One by one, the other officers followed suit, their voices joining in a chorus of resolve. Vance felt a surge of pride and gratitude swell within her, her lips curving into a slight smile. "Thank you, all of you," she said, her gaze sweeping across the assembled group. "I know the road ahead will be long and treacherous, but I have no doubt that together, we can find a way to defend our home and secure humanity's future in the stars." Vance paused, her expression hardening once more as she turned her attention back to the tactical displays. "We'll need to move quickly," she said, her tone becoming brisk and authoritative. "Our window of opportunity is narrow, and the enemy is closing in. I want teams assembled and ready to deploy within the next 24 hours. We'll hit the alien command ship hard and fast, disrupt their communications, and buy our forces the time they need to mount a counteroffensive." The officers nodded, their faces set with determination, and Vance knew that they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. With a deep breath, she straightened her shoulders and prepared to lead her crew into the heart of the enemy's stronghold, their very survival hanging in the balance. Infiltrating the Armada. The Andromeda's bridge was a hive of activity as Vance's trusted crew sprang into action, their fingers flying across consoles as they worked to bring the commander's daring plan to life. Tension hung thick in the air, tempered only by the unwavering determination that burned in each of their eyes. "All teams, report in," Vance commanded, her voice cutting through the background noise with effortless authority. One by one, the unit leaders checked in, each confirming that their preparations were on schedule. "Infiltration team, status update," Vance said, her gaze fixed on the holographic display that showed the alien armada's current position. "We're ready to deploy, Commander," Lieutenant Samantha Cho replied, her tone crisp and professional. "The stealth modules are fully charged, and the insertion shuttles are prepped and standing by." Vance nodded, her mind racing as she considered the myriad of risks and contingencies. "Excellent work, Lieutenant. Inform your team that we'll be launching in 30 minutes. Maintain radio silence until you reach the target coordinates." "Understood, ma'am," Cho responded, her expression hardening with resolve. "We won't let you down." Vance allowed herself a brief moment of pride as she watched the young officer hurry off to relay the orders. Cho was one of her most trusted subordinates, a brilliant tactician with a knack for thinking outside the box. If anyone could pull off this high-stakes infiltration mission, it was her. Turning her attention to the rest of the bridge crew, Vance drew in a deep breath. "All right, people, listen up. This is it, our one shot at turning the tide of this battle. I know the risks are high, but I also know that each and every one of you is more than up to the task." She paused, her gaze sweeping across the assembled officers. "Once the infiltration team has secured the target, we'll need to be ready to launch a coordinated assault. Our timing will have to be precise, and our execution flawless. Failure is not an option." A chorus of affirmations met her words, and Vance felt a surge of confidence coursing through her veins. These were her people, her crew, and she knew that they would fight to the last breath to defend their home. "Helm, set a course for the designated rendezvous point," Vance ordered, her fingers dancing across the console as she made the final preparations. "Tactical, I want all available firepower on standby. The moment that infiltration team gives the signal, we'll hit those alien bastards with everything we've got." The Andromeda's engines roared to life, the mighty vessel surging forward as it cut through the inky blackness of space. Vance gripped the armrests of her chair, her jaw set in a determined line as she watched the alien armada grow larger on the view screen. "Infiltration team, you are cleared for launch," she said, her voice calm and steady. "Godspeed, and may the odds be ever in your favor." Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The sleek, streamlined shuttles emerged from the Andromeda's hangar bay, their onboard cloaking devices activated as they sliced through the void towards the enemy fleet. Piloted by some of the Terran Alliance's most skilled pilots, the shuttles navigated the treacherous maze of enemy ships with precision and grace. Lieutenant Cho gripped the controls of her shuttle, her eyes narrowed in concentration as she guided the craft ever closer to the alien command ship. The plan was risky, to be sure, but they had no other choice. If they failed, It would mean the end of humanity as they knew it. "Team, check in," Cho said, her voice barely above a whisper as she kept her eyes glued to the sensors. One by one, the members of the infiltration team reported in, their voices low and steady. Cho allowed herself a brief moment of relief, knowing that her crew was as ready as they'd ever be. Approaching the target coordinates, Cho announced, her fingers dancing across the controls, preparing for final approach and insertion. The shuttles slowed to a crawl, their cloaking devices concealing them from the alien sensors as they drifted towards the massive command ship. Cho held her breath, her heart pounding in her chest as they drew closer and closer to their objective. "We're in position," she murmured, her gaze fixed on the readouts. Commencing infiltration. With a gentle nudge of the controls, Cho guided the shuttle towards a small, unguarded access hatch on the alien vessel's hull. The other shuttles followed suit, their occupants tensed and ready for the next phase of the operation. As the hatches hissed open, the infiltration team sprang into action, their specialized suits and equipment allowing them to move swiftly and silently through the alien corridors. Cho took point, her weapon at the ready as she led her team deeper into the heart of the enemy's stronghold. The alien technology was unlike anything they had ever encountered, with glowing displays and strange, unfamiliar systems lining the walls. Cho fought back the urge to marvel at the sheer complexity of it all, her focus laser-sharp as she guided her team towards their objective. "Maintain radio silence," she whispered, her gaze sweeping the area for any sign of hostiles. "We can't afford to be detected." The team moved with practiced efficiency, their boots barely making a sound as they navigated the labyrinthine passageways. Cho could feel the tension building with every step, the knowledge that a single misstep could spell disaster weighing heavily on them all. Finally, they reached a set of massive, ornate doors that Cho could only assume led to the alien command center. Signaling her team to hold position, she crept forward, her weapon at the ready as she peered through the crack in the doors. What she saw made her blood run cold. The command center was a hive of activity, with dozens of alien creatures bustling about and barking orders in a language she didn't understand. At the center of it all was a massive, throne-like chair, its occupant obscured by a shimmering force field. Cho drew in a sharp breath, her mind racing as she tried to formulate a plan of attack. This was the moment of truth, the pivotal point where everything could either go horribly wrong or spectacularly right. Steeling her nerves, she turned and signaled to her team, her expression grim but determined. It was time to put their plan into action and strike at the heart of the enemy's command structure. Humanity's very survival hung in the balance, and Cho knew that failure was not an option. The battle for Earth. The tension in the Terran Alliance Command Center was palpable as Commander Emily Vance and her senior officers pored over the latest intelligence reports. The alien armada's approach was relentless, its massive fleet of warships inching ever closer to the blue and green jewel they called home. Vance stood before the holographic display, her brow furrowed in deep concentration. The plan she and her infiltration team had devised was risky, to say the least, but it represented their best and perhaps only chance at turning the tide of the impending battle. "All right, people, listen up," she said, her voice cutting through the murmur of voices in the command center. "Lieutenant Cho's team has secured the intel we needed. Now it's time to put that information to use." She gestured towards the tactical display, her fingers dancing across the controls to highlight key points of interest. "The alien command ship is the linchpin of their entire operation," Vance explained, her gaze sweeping across the assembled officers. "If we can disrupt their communications and command structure, it will give our forces the opportunity they need to launch a counteroffensive." A murmur of agreement rippled through the group, and Vance allowed herself a brief moment of satisfaction. Her crew was ready, their determination forged in the face of overwhelming odds. "We'll need to coordinate a massive mobilization of our fleets and ground forces," she continued, her tone brisk and authoritative. "Every available unit will need to be deployed, with the sole objective of overwhelming the alien invaders and buying the infiltration team the time they need to complete their mission." Vance paused, her eyes narrowing as she contemplated the enormity of the task at hand. "I won't lie to you," she said, her voice lowering slightly. "The risks are high, and the casualties will be devastating. but we have no other choice. If we fail here, humanity's very existence will be at stake." The officers exchanged a series of solemn nods, their faces set with grim determination. Vance knew that they understood the gravity of the situation and that they were prepared to do whatever it took to defend their home. "All right, let's get to work," she said, her voice rising with renewed conviction. "I want all available units mobilized and ready to deploy within the next 12 hours. Tactical, I need you to coordinate with the Planetary Defense Command and ensure that our ground forces are fully integrated with our space-based assets." The command center erupted into a flurry of activity as the officers sprang into action, their fingers flying across consoles as they relayed orders and coordinated the massive military operation. Vance watched it all unfold, her mind racing as she considered the countless variables and potential pitfalls that lay ahead. "Commander, the fleet is ready to deploy on your order," a young officer reported, his expression a mixture of trepidation and determination. Vance nodded, her gaze hardening with resolve. "Initiate the launch sequence," she commanded, her voice carrying the weight of the entire human race. "And may the odds be ever in our favor." Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The skies above Earth burned with the fury of 1,000 suns as the Terran Alliance's massive fleet of warships clashed with the alien armada. Brilliant flashes of energy filled the void, the thunderous roar of weapons fire echoing across the planet's surface. Vance gripped the armrests of her chair, her knuckles white as she watched the unfolding battle on the Andromeda's viewscreen. The sheer scale of the conflict was unlike anything she had ever witnessed, and she knew that the fate of humanity hung in the balance. "All units, report in," she barked, her voice cutting through the cacophony of orders and status updates that filled the bridge. One by one, the fleet commanders checked in, their voices tense but resolute. "Starfleet Alpha, holding position and engaging enemy capital ships," a gruff voice reported. "Ground forces have established defensive perimeters around major population centers," another officer chimed in. "We're holding the line, but the alien ground troops are pushing hard." Vance nodded, her mind racing as she processed the information. "Keep up the pressure," she ordered, her eyes narrowing. "We need to buy the infiltration team as much time as possible." The battle raged on, the human forces fighting with a ferocity born of desperation and a fierce determination to defend their home. Vance watched as the Terran ships unleashed a barrage of devastating firepower, their weapons carving through the alien vessels with devastating precision. But for every enemy ship they destroyed, two more seemed to take its place. The alien armada was relentless, its sheer numerical advantage slowly overwhelming the human defenses. Vance gritted her teeth, her hands clenching into fists as she watched the battle unfold. She knew that the infiltration team was counting on them to hold the line, but the strain was beginning to show. "Casualty reports coming in, Commander," a young officer reported, his face pale. "We've lost over a third of our fleet, and ground forces are struggling to maintain their positions." Vance's jaw tightened, her mind racing as she considered their options. They were running out of time, and the alien forces showed no signs of slowing their advance. "Divert all available firepower to the defense of the major population centers," she ordered, her voice hardening with resolve. "We can't let them break through to the surface. The infiltration team needs to succeed, no matter the cost." The bridge crew sprang into action, their fingers flying across the consoles as they redirected the Terran fleet's firepower. The human ships surged forward, their weapons unleashing a devastating barrage of energy bolts and missile strikes. For a moment, it seemed as if the tide was turning, the alien vessels faltering under the sheer ferocity of the human onslaught. Vance allowed herself a brief glimmer of hope, her heart racing with the possibility of victory. But then, a massive alien dreadnought emerged from the enemy formation, its towering bulk bristling with weapons. The human ships unleashed everything they had, but the dreadnought shrugged off the barrage, its powerful shields deflecting the attacks with ease. "All units, fall back and regroup," Vance ordered, her voice laced with a hint of desperation. "We need to buy the infiltration team more time." The Terran fleet began a fighting withdrawal, their ships falling back in a carefully coordinated maneuver. The alien dreadnought pursued relentlessly, its devastating firepower carving a path of destruction through the human lines. Vance gripped the edge of the console, her knuckles white with the strain. She knew that the infiltration team was counting on them, that the fate of humanity hung in the balance. But the alien forces were proving to be an overwhelming challenge, their sheer numbers and firepower pushing the human defenders to the brink. As the battle raged on, Vance could feel the weight of the responsibility pressing down on her. She had to find a way to turn the tide, to give the infiltration team the time they needed to complete their mission. Failure was not an option. The very survival of their species depended on it. With grim determination, Vance steeled her nerves and prepared to lead her forces in one final, desperate push. The fate of Earth hung in the balance, and she would do whatever it took to ensure that humanity emerged victorious from this cosmic confrontation. Humanity's triumph. The battle raged on, the thunderous roar of weapons fire echoing across the void as the Terran Alliance fleet fought to hold the line against the relentless alien onslaught. Commander Emily Vance gripped the armrests of her chair, her eyes narrowed in concentration as she studied the tactical displays before her. The human forces had been pushed to the brink, their numbers dwindling in the face of the sheer scale and firepower of the alien armada. But Vance refused to give in to despair. She knew that the infiltration team was counting on them, that the fate of humanity hung in the balance. All units, maintain your positions, Vance commanded, her voice cutting through the cacophony of status reports and damage assessments. We need to buy the infiltration team as much time as possible. The Terran ships surged forward, their weapons unleashing a devastating barrage of energy bolts and missile strikes. The alien vessels staggered under the onslaught, their shields flickering and failing as the human forces fought with a ferocity born of desperation. But for every enemy ship they destroyed, two more seemed to take its place. Vance gritted her teeth, her mind racing as she searched for a way to turn the tide of the battle. "Lieutenant Cho, report," she barked into the comm, her eyes fixed on the holographic display that showed the position of the infiltration team. A moment of static crackled over the line, and then Cho's voice, tense but resolute, came through. "We've infiltrated the enemy command ship, Commander. We're in position and ready to strike." Vance felt a surge of relief wash over her, but the feeling was tempered by the knowledge that their window of opportunity was rapidly closing. "Copy that, Lieutenant," she replied, her fingers flying across the console as she coordinated the next phase of the operation. "On my mark, execute the plan. We'll do our best to keep the alien forces occupied and buy you the time you need." "Understood, ma'am," Cho said, the determination in her voice palpable. "Good luck, and may the odds be ever in our favor." Vance turned her attention back to the battle, her gaze sweeping across the holographic displays as she formulated her next move. The alien dreadnought was still pressing forward, its devastating firepower carving a path of destruction through the human lines. "All units, focus your firepower on that dreadnought," Vance ordered, her voice carrying the weight of 1,000 lives. "We need to disable it, no matter the cost." The Terran ships surged forward, their weapons blazing with renewed intensity. Brilliant flashes of energy filled the void as they unleashed a barrage of missiles and energy beams, their collective firepower hammering against the dreadnought's powerful shields. For a moment, it seemed as if the human forces might prevail, the alien vessel faltering under the relentless assault. But then, the dreadnought's shields flared to life once more, and it continued its inexorable advance. Vance gritted her teeth, her mind racing as she searched for a way to turn the tide. She knew that the infiltration team was counting on them, that the fate of humanity hung in the balance. "All units, hold your positions," she commanded, her voice cutting through the din of the battle. "Lieutenant Cho, the dreadnought is yours. Execute the plan." On the alien command ship, Lieutenant Samantha Cho and her team sprang into action, their specialized equipment and training allowing them to move swiftly and silently through the maze of corridors. They had reached the heart of the enemy's stronghold, and now the fate of their species rested squarely on their shoulders. Cho gripped her weapon tightly, her eyes narrowed as she peered through the crack in the massive, ornate doors that led to the alien command center. The room was a hive of activity, with dozens of alien creatures bustling about and barking orders in a language she didn't understand. At the center of it all was a massive, throne-like chair, its occupant obscured by a shimmering force field. Cho knew that this was their target, the key to disrupting the alien fleet's command and control. Signaling to her team, Cho took a deep breath and pushed the doors open, her weapon raised and ready to fire. The alien creatures turned in surprise, their eyes widening as they caught sight of the intruders. But before they could react, Cho and her team unleashed a barrage of energy bolts, their weapons carving through the alien ranks with devastating precision. The creatures fell, their strange, otherworldly bodies crumpling to the floor as the human infiltrators fought their way towards the command chair. Reaching the force field, Cho paused, her mind racing as she searched for a way to bypass the alien technology. She knew that time was of the essence, that the human fleet was fighting a desperate battle to hold the line. Suddenly, a familiar voice crackled over the comm. "Lieutenant, the fleet is in position. On your mark, we'll hit the dreadnought with everything we've got." Cho felt a surge of determination course through her veins. "Understood, Commander," she replied, her fingers dancing across the alien console as she searched for the controls that would disable the force field. With a triumphant cry, she found the right sequence, and the shimmering barrier flickered and died. Stepping forward, Cho leveled her weapon at the alien creature seated upon the throne, its eyes widening with a mix of fear and defiance. "This is for Earth," she growled, her finger tightening on the trigger. The alien's body crumpled, its strange, otherworldly form collapsing to the floor in a heap. Cho turned to her team, her expression grim but resolute. "Move out," she ordered, her voice carrying the weight of 1,000 lives. "We need to disable the enemy's communications and buy the fleet the time they need to strike." The infiltration team surged forward, their weapons blazing as they carved a path of destruction through the alien command center. Explosions rocked the massive vessel, as Cho and her team systematically dismantled the enemy's communication relays and command systems. On the bridge of the Andromeda, Vance watched the battle unfold, her heart pounding in her chest. The moment of truth had arrived, and the fate of humanity hung in the balance. "All units, stand by," she ordered, her voice ringing with a steely resolve. "On my mark, we hit that dreadnought with everything we've got." The Terran ships held their positions, their weapons charged and ready to fire. Vance's fingers danced across the console, her eyes fixed on the holographic display that showed the status of the infiltration team's mission. "Lieutenant Cho, report," she said, her voice tense with anticipation. "The enemy's communications are down, Commander," Cho replied, her voice laced with a hint of triumph. "The fleet is clear to engage the dreadnought." Vance felt a surge of relief wash over her, and she knew that the time had come to strike. "All units, open fire," she commanded, her voice carrying the weight of 1,000 generations. The Terran ships unleashed a devastating barrage of energy bolts and missile strikes, their combined firepower slamming into the alien dreadnought's weakened shields. The massive vessel shuddered under the onslaught, its systems flickering and failing as the human forces poured on the pressure. Vance gripped the armrests of her chair, her eyes fixed on the viewscreen as she watched the epic confrontation unfold. The alien dreadnought fought back with everything it had, its powerful weapons carving through the human ships with devastating precision. But the Terran forces were relentless, their determination fueled by the knowledge that the fate of their species hung in the balance. Vance felt a surge of pride swell within her as she watched her crew fight with a ferocity that defied the overwhelming odds. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the dreadnought's shields collapsed, and the massive vessel began to crumble, its hull breached and its systems failing. A cheer went up on the bridge of the Andromeda, and Vance felt a weight lift from her shoulders. The alien invaders had been pushed back, their once mighty fleet reduced to smoldering ruins. "All units, cease fire," Vance ordered, her voice tinged with a hint of exhaustion. "Secure the area and prepare for recovery operations." As the Terran ships moved in to secure the battlefield, Vance allowed herself a brief moment of relief. The battle had been hard-fought and the casualties had been devastating, but humanity had prevailed. She turned to her crew, her eyes shining with a mixture of pride and gratitude. "Well done, all of you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. You have saved our home, our way of life, and the very future of our species. I am honored to have served alongside each and every one of you." The bridge erupted into a chorus of cheers and applause, the weight of their victory finally sinking in. Vance felt a sense of relief and exhilaration wash over her, and she knew that this was a moment that would be etched into the annals of human history. As the celebrations continued, Vance turned her gaze towards the stars, her mind already racing with the possibilities that lay ahead. The human race had proven its resilience, its ingenuity, and its indomitable spirit in the face of overwhelming adversity. And now, with the alien threat vanquished, they were free to explore the cosmos, to forge new alliances, and to shape their own destiny among the stars. Vance smiled, her eyes shining with a newfound hope and determination. The future of humanity was bright, and she knew that her people were more than ready to meet the challenges that lay ahead.